Good morning. This is Wednesday, March the 17th, 2015. This is my sister Moie's birthday. She's 5 years younger than I am. Reading from Chronicles of Narnia, a short story that happened to a boy named Eustace. About 6 days after they had landed on Dragon Island, Edmund happened to wake up very early one morning. He was just getting gray so that you could see the tree trunks if they were between you and the bay, but not in the other direction. As he woke, he thought he heard something moving, so he raised himself on one elbow and looked about him. And presently he thought he saw a dark figure moving on the seaward side of the wood. The idea that at once occurred to his mind was, "Are we so sure there are no natives on this island after all?" Then he thought it was Caspian. It was about the right size, but he knew that Caspian had been sleeping next to him and could see that he hadn't moved. Edmund made sure that his sword was in its place and then rose to investigate. He came down softly to the edge of the wood, and the dark figure was still there. He saw now that it was too small for Caspian and too big for Lucy. It did not run away. Edmund drew his sword and was about to challenge the stranger when the stranger said in a low voice, "Is that you, Edmund?" "Yes, who are you?" said he. "Don't you know me?" said the other. It's me, Eustace." "By Jove," said Edmund, "so it is, my dear chap." "Hush," said Eustace, and lurched as if he were going to fall. "Hello," said Edmund, steadying him. "What's up? Are you ill?" Eustace was silent for so long that Edmund thought he was fainting. But at last he said, "It's been ghastly. You don't know, but it's all right now. Could we go and talk somewhere? I don't want to meet the others just yet." "Yes, rather, anywhere you like," said Edmund. "We can go and sit on the rocks over there, I say. I'm glad to see you looking yourself again. You must have had a pretty beastly time." They went to the rocks and sat down, looking out across the bay while the sky got paler and paler, and the stars disappeared except for one very bright one low down and near the horizon. "I won't tell you how I became a dragon until I can tell the others and get it all over," said Eustace. "By the way, I didn't even know it was a dragon till I heard you all using the word when I turned up here the other morning. I want to tell you how I stopped being one." "Fire ahead," said Edmund. "Well, last night I was more miserable than ever, and that beastly arm ring was hurting like anything." "Is that all right now?" Eustace laughed, a different laugh from any Edmund had heard him give before, and slipped the bracelet easily off his arm. "There it is," he said, "and anyone who likes can have it as far as I'm concerned. Well, as I was saying, I was lying awake and wondering what on earth would become of me, and then, but mind you, it may have been all a dream, I don't know." "Go on," said Edmund with considerable patience. "Well, anyway, I looked up and saw the very last thing I expected, a huge lion coming slowly towards me. And one queer thing was that there was no moon last night, but there was moonlight where the lion was. So it came nearer and nearer. I was terribly afraid of it. You may think that, being a dragon, I could have knocked any lion out easily enough, but it wasn't that kind of fear. I wasn't afraid of it eating me. I was just afraid of it, if you can understand. Well, it came close up to me and looked straight into my eyes, and I shut my eyes tight, but that wasn't good because it told me to follow it." "You mean it spoke?" "I don't know. Now that you mention it, I don't think it did, but it told me all the same. And I knew it'd have to do what it told me, so I got up and followed it. And it led me a long way into the mountains, and there was always this moonlight over and round the lion wherever he went. So at last we came to the top of the mountain I'd never seen before, and on top of this mountain there was a garden, trees and fruit and everything. In the middle of it there was a well. I knew it was a well because you could see the water bubbling up from the bottom of it. But it was a lot bigger than most wells, like a very big round bath with marble steps going down into it. The water was as clear as anything, and I thought if I could get in there and bathe, it would ease the pain in my leg. But the lion told me I must undress first. Mind you, I don't know if he said any words out loud or not. I was just going to say that I couldn't undress because I hadn't any clothes on when I suddenly thought that the dragons are sneaky sort of things and snakes can cast their skins. Well, of course, thought I, that's what the lion means. So I started scratching myself and my scales began coming off all over the place. And then I scratched a little deeper, and instead of just scales coming off here and there, my whole skin started peeling off beautifully like it does after an illness, or as if I was a banana. In a minute or two I just stepped out of it. I could see it lying there beside me, looking rather nasty. It was a most lovely feeling, so I started to go down into the well for my bath. But just as I was going to put my feet into the water, I looked down and saw that they were all hard and rough and wrinkled and scaly just as they had been before. Oh, that's all right, said I. It only means I had another smaller suit on underneath the first one, and I'll have to get out of it too. So I scratched and tore again, and this underskin peeled off beautifully, and out I stepped and left it lying beside the other one and went down to the well for my bath. Well, exactly the same thing happened again. I thought to myself, oh dear, however many skins have I got to take off? For I was longing to bathe my leg. So I scratched away for the third time and got off a third skin just like the others. And I stepped out of it. But as soon as I looked at myself in the water, I knew it had been no good. Then the lion said, but I don't know if it spoke, "You will have to let me undress you." I was afraid of his claws, I can tell you, but I was pretty nearly desperate now, so I just lay flat down on my back and let him do it. The very first tear he made was so deep that I thought it had gone right into my heart. And when he began pulling the skin off, it hurt worse than anything I'd ever felt. The only thing that made me able to bear it was just the pleasure of feeling the stuff peel off. You know, if you've ever picked the scab off a sore place, it hurts like Billy-O, but it's fun to see it coming away. I know exactly what you mean, said Edmund. Well, he peeled the beastly stuff right off, just as I thought I'd done it myself the other 3 times, only they hadn't hurt, and there it was, lying on the grass, only ever so much thicker and darker and more knobbly looking than the others had been. And there was I, as smooth and soft as a peeled switch and smaller than I'd been. Then he caught hold of me. I didn't like that much, for I was very tender underneath that I had no skin, and threw me into the water. It smarted like anything, but only for a moment. After that, it became perfectly delicious. And as soon as I started swimming and splashing, I found that all the pain had gone from my arm. And then I saw why. I'd turned into a boy again. You'd think me simply phony if I told you how I felt about my own arms. I know they've no muscle and pretty moldy compared with Caspian's, but I was so glad to see them. After a bit, the lion took me out and dressed me. Dressed you? With his paws? Well, I don't exactly remember that bit, but he did somehow or other, in new clothes, the same I've got on now, as a matter of fact, and then suddenly I was back here, which is what makes me think it must have been a dream. No, it wasn't a dream, said Edmund. Why not? Well, there are the clothes for one thing, and you've been, well, undragoned for another. What do you think it was then? Asked Eustace. I think you've seen Aslan, said Edmund. Aslan, said Eustace. I've heard that name mentioned several times since we joined the Dawn Treader, and I felt, I don't know what, I hated it. But I was hating everything then, and by the way, I'd like to apologize. I'm afraid I've been very beastly. That's all right, Edmund. Between ourselves, you haven't been as bad as I was on my first trip to Narnia. You were only an ass, but I was a traitor. Well, don't tell me about it then, said Eustace. But who is Aslan? Do you know him? Well, he knows me, said Edmund. He's the great lion, the son of the emperor over the sea, who saved me and saved Narnia. We've all seen him. Lucy sees him most often, and it may be Aslan's country we are sailing to. Neither said anything for a while. The last bright star had vanished, and though they could not see the sunrise because of the mountains on their right, they knew it was going on because the sky above them and the bay before them turned the color of roses. Then some bird of parrot kind screamed in the wood behind them, and they heard movement among the trees. And finally, a blast on Caspian's horn. The camp was astir. It's one of my favorite images and stories about how we are not able to purify ourselves, but he does call us to be holy as he is holy, to be perfect as he is holy. And it requires a certain magic comes to my mind, but really an act of God in order for the thing to be accomplished. This morning, I found the reading in my utmost for his highest of the same challenge, the worker's ruling passion. 2 Corinthians 5:9. Wherefore we labor that we may be accepted of him. Wherefore we labor. What is our part, Lord, today? It is arduous work to keep the master ambition in front. It means holding oneself to the high ideal year in and year out. Not being ambitious to win souls or to establish churches or to give revivals, but being ambitious only to be accepted of him. It is not lack of spiritual experience that leads to failure, but lack of laboring to keep the ideal right. Once a week at least, take stock before God and see whether you are keeping your life up to the standard he wishes. Paul is like a musician who does not need the approval of the audience if he can catch the look of approval from his master. Any ambition which is in the tiniest degree away from this central one of being approved unto God may end in our being castaways. Learn to discern. I like that. Learn to discern where the ambition leads, and you will see why it is so necessary to live facing the Lord Jesus Christ. Paul says, lest my body should make me take another line, I'm constantly watching so that I may bring it into subjection and keep it under. 1 Corinthians 9:27. I have to learn to relate everything to the master ambition and to maintain it without any cessation. My worth to God in public is what I am in private. Man. My worth to God in public is what I am in private. In my master ambition, is my master ambition to please him and be acceptable to him? Or is it something less, no matter how noble? Those two go together in that God constantly calls us to himself, and we constantly have to yield, not to temptation, but to yield to him, to be in fellowship to him, to focus on him. I have a song that I'm going to finish with, and by Helen Limmel, 1863 to 1961. You'll recognize the chorus. I'll see if I can't do the verse. O soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see. There's a light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. That was rough. Through death into life everlasting, he passed and we follow him there. Over us sin no more had dominion, far more than conquerors we are. His word shall not fail you, he promised. Believe him and all will be well. Then go to a world that is dying.